This video is sponsored by Squarespace. In 1992, the acclaimed Batman the Animated Series changed small screen animation forever. The series won widespread critical praise for its dark deco art style, noir atmosphere, and mature storytelling. It also accrued a passionate fanbase of children, teens, and adults. As the Caped Crusaders' animated adventures ended in the mid-90s, Warner Bros. Animation tasked the show's creative team with bringing that other iconic DC hero to life in his own series. But would lightning strike twice? Batman the Animated Series concluded in 1995, having cemented itself as the definitive incarnation of the character in the minds of many fans. Before the series ended, one of its chief architects, Timm, had lined up his next project, a superhero action comedy called Freakazoid. Steven Spielberg co-developed the show and took it in a more overtly comedic direction, rather than the action hybrid Timm had envisioned. As the project strayed further from his initial idea, Timm decided to step away from Freakazoid before its premiere. Soon after, Warner Bros. Animation head Gene McCurdy approached Timm about another DC superhero show, Superman the Animated Series. Batman the Animated Series had kept the Batman brand fresh on television during the long gaps between movies. Superman, however, hadn't graced the silver screen since the disastrous Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. In the mid-90s, the studio looked to resurrect the Man of Steel on the big screen, so a concurrent Superman cartoon seemed like a wise investment. The movie the animated series was meant to coincide with was the infamous Superman Lives, but the project languished in development hell for years and was eventually cancelled. Timm was initially hesitant to make a Superman cartoon. He was a Superman fan, but he didn't immediately have a take on the character the way he had with Batman. Thankfully, he wasn't alone in developing the project. Eric Radomski, who co-developed Batman the Animated Series with Timm, had moved on from Warner Bros. Animation. He would eventually produce Todd McFarlane's Spawn for HBO. Alan Burnett, who had worked on Batman, joined Timm on Superman as co-producer. Writer Paul Dini and director Dan Reba were among many others who carried over from Batman to Superman. The creative team were all fans of the iconic Fleischer Superman cartoons from the 1940s. One idea was to lean into this influence by making Superman the Animated Series a period piece. Another idea from Timm was to make a proto-Justice League series. Each episode would feature Superman teaming up with another DC superhero. Neither idea panned out for one reason or another. Instead, the team all agreed to expand the universe they had created with Batman. The show would be modern, but with a retro-futuristic look Timm dubbed Ocean Liner Deco. In contrast to Batman's dark deco, Superman's look was heavily inspired by the bright and colourful travel posters from the 50s and 60s. The team's overall take on the characters and stories was heavily influenced by writer John Byrne, who had relaunched Superman in the 1986 miniseries The Man of Steel. The previous decade had seen the monumental crossover event Crisis on Infinite Earths, which reset the DC Universe continuity. At the time, Byrne felt that pre-Crisis Superman had become far too powerful, accumulating a vast array of powers which made it difficult to write genuine jeopardy in Superman stories. Therefore, in The Man of Steel, Byrne jettisoned Superman's extra abilities and placed strict limitations on his powers. He also erased Superboy from the character's origin story, kept the Kents alive, and also made Clark Kent the real identity, while Superman was the disguise. Some contemporary writers criticized Byrne's take on the character, but Timm and Burnett embraced these changes and integrated them into their new show. However, after a fierce debate with DC Comics, they decided against giving Superman a mullet. To cast the show, the team once again turned to voice director Andrea Romano. After a long search, Tim Daly landed the lead role. Like Kevin Conroy before him, Daly was a stage and screen actor with little to no voice acting experience. At the time, he was starring in the sitcom Wings, and initially saw Superman as a fun side gig. He soon gained a greater appreciation of voice acting when he realized just how demanding the work was. Clancy Brown was among those who auditioned for Clark Kent. Brown was well known for playing villains on the big and small screen. He was perhaps best known at the time for his performance as the Kurgan in the cult classic fantasy film Highlander. After he had finished his Superman audition, Bruce Timm asked him if he'd like to read for Lex Luthor. At first, Brown was reluctant, not wanting to be typecast as a bad guy, but he read the part nonetheless. Naturally, he knocked it out of the park and was offered the role on the spot, which he accepted. In an attempt to replicate the success of Harley Quinn, the writers created a female sidekick character for Lex Luthor called Mercy Graves. She was voiced by Lisa Edelstein, who would go on to star in the immensely successful medical drama House MD. Dana Delaney had previously voiced Andrea Beaumont in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and was asked to audition for Lois Lane. Unbeknownst to the producers, Delaney was a huge Superman fan and had dreamed of playing Lois Lane as a child. Her natural charisma handily won her the part, and she was overjoyed. Rounding out the cast of the Daily Planet was David Kaufman as Jimmy Olsen and George Zunza as Perry White. Real-life couple Mike Farrell and Shelley Fabares were cast as Jonathan and Martha Kent respectively. Like Batman the Animated Series, much of the animation for Superman was done overseas in Japan and Korea. The core team at Warner Bros. Animation handled storyboarding, designs, and post-production. The revamped art style was intended to streamline production. Fewer lines to animate each frame meant smoother motion and more energetic action. However, the epic scope of the series largely negated this attempt at streamlining. Compared to Batman's adventures, which could be easily contained in a handful of locations, Superman's stories required a vast array of characters and environments. There was much trial and error as the various animation teams discovered the best way to render Superman's flying and super strength. Due to the tight schedule arising from these challenges, there was no time left to create a proper opening title sequence like the kind seen in Batman. Though some shots were completed, the producers had to settle for a sequence of clips which ended on Superman's shield. The opening theme was once again composed by Shirley Walker. To distance their show from the Christopher Reeve version, Walker chose not to use John Williams' theme and composed her own theme instead. However, taking after John Williams, Walker made sure the opening theme spoke the word Superman. The first episode of Superman the Animated Series debuted on Kids WB on the 6th of September 1996. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the only tool you'll need to create a beautiful looking website for your business, portfolio, or online store. I used it to create my production company's website, and I didn't know the first thing about coding. I just found a template that worked for me and customized it using simple drag and drop tools. And now the process is even easier thanks to design intelligence. By combining 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise and cutting-edge AI technology, you can have a brand new website up and running literally within minutes. Everything from finding a template to integrating SEO can be personally tailored to your needs. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your website and use the coupon code Coleman for 10% off your first purchase. The first episode of Superman the Animated Series is bold in many ways. Not only is it an epic 3-parter, but the show's title character doesn't even appear until almost 40 minutes into the premiere. The entirety of Part 1 retells the fall of Superman's homeworld. Despite how well known the Man of Steel's origin is, the Last Son of Krypton puts a unique spin on the story. Unlike the New Age crystal-infused Krypton of the original movie, this Krypton is a lush world full of beautiful scenery, futuristic cityscapes, and real people with rich inner lives. Its end is a tragedy that could have been avoided. Maintaining the stark differences, this version of Jor-El is a heroic man of action. In the opening scene, he pilots several sci-fi vehicles across a barren landscape and has a run-in with a giant amoeba-like monster. Coming off the end of Batman the Animated Series, The Last Son of Krypton gives us an opening as far removed from the back alleys and rooftops of Gotham City as possible. Yet amidst the otherworldly aesthetic and spectacular sci-fi action is a human story of a man fighting to save the ones he loves. This is the ethos that underpins Superman the Animated Series as a whole, astounding science fiction with a human heart. In some ways, the viewer's foreknowledge of Krypton's fate works in the story's favour. Whereas the original movie depicted Krypton's leadership as too complacent to accept what's happening to their world, here it is a secret suppressed by the cold and calculating Brainiac.
You're transmitting your memory to a satellite. You're saving yourself.
Am I not the repository of all Kryptonian knowledge? Should I not be saved above all?
Knowing his world is doomed, the episode's climax sees Jor-El racing to save his only son before it's too late. After several clashes with armed police, the rocket is launched and Krypton is abandoned to its fate.
Jor-El's escaped their perimeter. They're requesting further instructions.
It doesn't matter anymore. Farewell, Krypton.
The deafening silence left by Brainiac gives the planet's destruction a haunting atmosphere. Until Lolita Ridmanis' excellent score rises again, ensuring the viewer's heart breaks and then soars. Part 2 continues with that human perspective, following a young Clark Kent as he unlocks his powers and discovers his true origins. Despite the attempts at relatability, the Smallville chapter of the origin isn't as emotionally powerful as the Donna Reeve version. Unlike Part 1, much of it feels like retreading familiar ground. The one exception is the scene where Clark flies for the first time. The cool moonlight and sweeping music create an inspiring and wondrous moment. The three-parter really comes alive when it moves to Metropolis. The Jack Kirby-infused vision of Krypton was impressive, but Metropolis is where the show's art direction truly shines. The World's Fair of Gotham may have fallen into ruin, but in Metropolis the world of tomorrow came true. The towering skyscrapers and sprawling motorways which turned Gotham into a German expressionist nightmare are used in Superman to give the city a sense of grandeur and retro-futurist optimism. Within the city, we find Lois Lane. Dana Delaney charms right off the bat in the role as she rattles off a flurry of great lines.
I spent a week on the docks with rats and frizzed hair exposing the biggest gun smuggling ring to hit this town in 10 years, and what makes the front page? Some sprouty, new-age, granola-crunching fluff piece on angels.
Before we're reintroduced to Clark Kent. The strong dialogue continues between the two as the following scenes cement their dynamic as rival reporters. As controversial as John Byrne's take on Superman is, making Clark Kent the real identity means the viewer isn't just waiting around for Superman. The scenes between Clark and Lois are full of enjoyable banter and witty humor.
What'd you get?
A shared byline, if you use it.
I apologize. You're not the Rube hayseed I took you for.
Thanks. I think.
By the time Superman finally appears, it's given the appropriate amount of ceremony with Shirley Walker's theme blasting in its full glory.
No way.
Yet even with Superman, the episode maintains the human perspective. Small moments like Superman struggling to stop a plane crash,
Nice one, Clark.
go a long way in making the character feel relatable. The action set pieces themselves are enthralling. They feel massive in scope and fluid in motion. The mech suit battle at the end of Part 3 comfortably reaches the heights of Fleischer's Superman. It shows the Man of Steel's awesome power, but it also shows him struggling at times. It feels like a real fight with authentic drama, and not just empty spectacle, making Superman's eventual victory feel earned.
Shall we go a few rounds without the suit? Too bad.
As a showcase of the series to come, The Last Son of Krypton is a terrific introduction. It hits all the beats we've come to expect in a Superman story. The beats are the same, but at every opportunity, the creative team puts a new spin on the material. There's a vibrant world full of daring adventure, interesting characters with fun personalities, and tremendous potential for the show to come.
Big guy, you're okay!
Having re-established Superman's origin, the following few episodes adapt more classic Superman stories, such as the first appearance of Kryptonite in A Little Piece of Home.
Lex Lab's got a hold of some kind of meteor that seems to have the ability to drain Superman's powers. This is just a small sliver. You sure you're not catching something?
Classic comic book villains like Toyman and Parasite are also introduced. In Toyman's case, the writers showcase their ability to improve upon the source material. What was a gimmicky and somewhat silly character in the comics is transformed into an effective antagonist with a tragic backstory and creepy doll-like mask.
But without his father, the poor little boy was bounced from foster home to foster home like a little toy that nobody wanted.
However, the Man of Steel's clash with Toyman also highlights a flaw within the series as a whole. The creator's choice of limiting Superman's powers is an understandable one, but ultimately it conjures more problems than it solves. We are never given a clear understanding of what these limits are. What Superman is vulnerable to exactly is never properly defined, leading to some inconsistencies. Machine gun fire will bounce off him in one episode, but Toyman's souped-up bouncing ball seems to hurt him. He walks through fire in the first episode, but a later villain who throws fire is a serious threat. It seems like in every other episode, Superman is held in some kind of energy beam, screaming in pain, yet it's unclear how seriously these attacks are harming him. Superman often struggles to lift heavy things, but he never fails to lift anything. Despite his so-called limitations, Superman's power level is still entirely up to the writer in any given episode. This defeats the point of imposing these limits in the first place, and can feel like false tension being added to the action. Superman's extreme power is a common criticism of the character, but clever writers have addressed this in a variety of creative ways. Parasite is one such villain. As a creature capable of draining Superman's abilities, his extreme power becomes a hindrance rather than a help. How can Superman fight someone he can't even touch? Lex Luthor is another such example of this ingenuity. Theirs is a battle of wits, with Luthor concocting various schemes and traps to outthink and outfight the Man of Steel. Grant Morrison, writer of the acclaimed All-Star Superman, articulated the shallowness of this criticism succinctly.
The great thing about Superman is even when you can juggle stars, Lois Lane can undermine them with one cruel word. And that was what was powerful about it for me, was the fact that's why we made him even more powerful than ever, because everybody kept saying, you can't write a Superman story, because if he can do anything, then what conflicts are there? And I thought, well, emotional conflicts, the biggest ones, the things we all understand.
However, this doesn't mean Superman can never be in physical danger. Many of his villains are just as strong as he is, if not stronger. There is a way to engineer gripping action while still maintaining a powerful Superman. All it takes is some extra thought. The aforementioned Parasite is the first such example, but the next one comes in the episode The Way of All Flesh. When former Lex Luthor henchman John Corbin contracts a fatal disease, his old employer gives him an upgrade with some disturbing side effects. Professional movie villain Malcolm McDowell reprises his role as Corbin. Despite the charm McDowell gives to the character, Corbin is an uncomplicatedly evil man. Equipped with super strength, invulnerability, and a kryptonite heart, he's more than a match for the Man of Steel. The action here is gritty and brutal, with Superman in serious trouble. However, Corbin soon realizes the downside of his newfound power.
I didn't feel anything.
See if you feel this! Ow!
What did they do to me?
If the remit of Superman the Animated Series is to find the humanity within its stories, then Corbin's fate is the cruelest of all. He was merciless and cruel to begin with, but his transformation turns him into something cold and inhuman.
A fraud! There's the reality. The metal behind the man. It's all I am now. It's who I am. Metallo.
He is trapped by his metal body, relishing its power, but unable to enjoy the fruits of his victories. The Way of All Flesh follows the traditions of sci-fi B-movies, a scientific experiment which unleashes a monster onto the world. By the story's end, Corbin is no longer a man, but a machine, one driven solely by the need for revenge. A machine man also features prominently in the following episode, Stolen Memories. When Lex Luthor makes first contact with an extraterrestrial visitor, Superman is suddenly confronted by a figure from his long-lost homeworld, Brainiac. The animated series version of Brainiac was quite the departure from his comic book incarnation. At the time, he was a green-skinned alien conqueror from the planet Colu. It was Alan Burnett's idea to make him a Kryptonian artificial intelligence who betrays his creators. Corey Burton gives a memorable performance as the character. Bruce Timm had told him to create a voice inspired by Vic Perrin's opening narration from The Outer Limits.
For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set.
One can appreciate Jor-El's hard work. However, he is still mistaken. As I've stated before, the Templars are the result of a slight polar shift. No more.
Burton gives Brainiac an unsettling, uncanny presence. It sounds just like a machine trying to replicate a human voice. At first, Superman sees Brainiac as someone who can provide a bridge to his past.
You will know your world as if you lived there yourself.
But Earth is my home now.
Powers such as yours should not be confined to a single infinitesimal dot.
But of course, the truth is much darker. In an impressively animated sequence, Superman learns the horrifying truth of Brainiac's mission. To Brainiac, life is merely information. People and their history are reduced to data. Against such a foe, Superman comes to symbolize the human spirit, the soul of life itself. This philosophical conflict is writ large on screen as the two Kryptonians face off inside Brainiac's ship. Though Lex Luthor endures as Superman's arch-enemy, the animated series incarnation of Brainiac is just as compelling as a nemesis.
I've had my fill of aliens for one day.
Stolen Memories is the first hint of a wider cosmic universe, one which comes up again in the episode The Main Man. This two-parter sees intergalactic bounty hunter Lobo tasked with bringing the last son of Krypton to the mysterious Preserver. What starts as Metropolis contending with another extraterrestrial visitor evolves into a full-on outer space adventure full of spaceships and aliens. The episode is packed with memorable design work, such as a rat-like creature with a second face over one eye.
If anyone's gonna collect on Squeak, it's gonna be family. Hand him over.
The eponymous Lobo can be hit or miss depending on the viewer. The character rode the wave of hard-edged, adult-oriented comics which began in the 80s and continued well into the 90s. The animated series, however, aired on kids' television, and so he's dialed back considerably.
You pig! Ow!
Ah! I like a babe who plays rough. Come on, let me have another. Right here, right here!
The resulting portrayal of the character feels somewhat compromised. At times he feels like a self-parody, at others a juvenile idea of cool and badass. How well his antics go down with the viewer can make or break the episode for some. Either way, Lobo and Superman make for a fun odd couple as they are forced to team up in Part 2 to escape the Preserver. This wacky sci-fi romp is full of action and humor and expands Superman's universe in exciting ways.
I guess that boy's just a sucker for hard luck cases.
After a solid first year, Season 1 ends with the return of Parasite in Two's a Crowd. When criminal mastermind Dr. Garver falls into a coma, the authorities enlist Parasite's help to find the location of a bomb Garver planted to ransom the city. But when he tries to extract the information, Garver's mind is transferred to Parasite's body. The episode notably features a guest performance from acclaimed actor Brian Cox as Garver. The stage and screen legend builds a threatening intelligence through Garver, one made even more dangerous in his habitation of Parasite's body.
2 minutes. That's all you've got. Now come over here and hold out your hand like a good boy.
In his debut episode Feeding Time, Rudy Jones aka Parasite was introduced as a lowly janitor hoping to score big with some corporate theft. In the same sci-fi B-movie tradition as Metallo, a terrible accident transforms Jones into the vampiric villain. As much as he wants to rise above his position, Rudy is too small-minded and selfish to know what to do with the abilities he's been given. He is easily manipulated by Garver, who exerts more and more control over his body throughout the episode. In the end, it's Superman who gets the better of him by turning both minds against each other. The greatest irony is that Rudy could have had it all with Garver's help, but in the end, he seems perfectly content with the vapid reality television inside his prison cell. But Superman the Animated Series was anything but vapid. It didn't have the same impact as its predecessor show, but Superman received strong ratings and critical praise. Though the dark noir tone of Batman was absent, Superman was still recognized for its high production values and strong storytelling. Season 2 grows even larger in scope, opening with 2 sci-fi epics back-to-back. First is Blasts from the Past, a 2-parter which sees 2 Phantom Zone criminals escape their prison and attempt to conquer Earth. Jack Sur and Mala are obvious substitutes for General Zod and Ursa, but they're memorable villains in their own right.
My, they are afraid of us.
Would you like a demonstration why, my darling?
Nothing would please me more.
While not as substantive as Stolen Memories, the episode features a string of spectacular action sequences. The finale plays out like a loose remake of Superman 2, with Superman challenging both criminals to a showdown and then catching them in a trap.
Parole revoked.
It's an entertaining slice of superhero action, but the following episode, The Promethean, is even grander in scope. As Superman helps to divert an asteroid headed for Earth, he discovers a gigantic alien creature shackled to the rock. The Promethean, more than any other episode, conveys a sense of overwhelming scale. The Promethean and its origins are so vast that there's a feeling of the characters stumbling onto something far beyond their understanding. This is another episode evocative of 50s sci-fi B-movies, this time taking inspiration from giant monster films like Godzilla. Unfortunately, the episode feels the need to explain the creature's origins. It's far more effective when left as a mystery. Even so, this is still a captivating episode full of striking visuals and epic action. Season 2 also sees the return of Metallo in several strong episodes. Whereas Superman's conflict with Lex Luthor or Brainiac hinge on ideology and philosophy, his conflict with Metallo was built out of pure hatred. Like the villain of a classic horror tale, no matter how many times he's defeated, he just keeps coming back. In The Way of All Flesh, he's cast at the bottom of the ocean and forced to walk along the sea floor for weeks or perhaps even months. In his second episode, Action Figures, he becomes caught in a lava flow. When the lava cools, he is trapped inside solid rock, completely aware but unable to move. These cruel and unusual defeats only amplify his thirst for revenge, and that intense emotion comes through in the conflict.
Remember how you left me, Superman, buried in rock? I couldn't move, I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, but I could think. And all I thought about was how I was going to make you pay.
The Man of Steel is forced onto the back foot, desperately trying to improvise some way of once again defeating his metallic opponent.
Bet you think you've got me? Well, surprise!
Heavy Metal also features the introduction of the hero Steel. Genius inventor John Henry Irons, voiced by Star Trek's Michael Dorn, had previously appeared in the episode Prototype. As Superman recovers from a battle with Metallo, Irons faces Corbin one-on-one in his new battle armor, eventually dealing the final blow.
Take this!
Steel is one of many DC characters who cross over in the show. The episode Speed Demons introduces the Flash.
Sorry I'm late, just woke up 2 minutes ago.
In a highly publicized race to see who is the fastest man alive, both heroes clash with the fiendish Weather Wizard.
I should have heeded the storm warning, Superman.
There's been a change in the weather. What?
The episode is a treat for fans of the wider DC universe, with a fun rivalry between Superman and Flash.
Give me 5.
Go!
Too slow.
The Hand of Fate features an appearance from the superhero wizard Dr. Fate. The episode is soaked in Lovecraftian horror as those trapped inside the Daily Planet are transformed into nightmarish monsters. Unfortunately, the episode is let down by the script's handling of Dr. Fate. Unlike Superman's crossover with The Flash, the Man of Steel apparently already met Dr. Fate off-screen. This has the effect of neutering the drama, which hinges on Fate's reluctance to adopt his wizard mantle again.
Don't waste your life in endless battle as I did. Not when the universe beckons.
You're wrong, Fate. We're nothing alike.
Having never seen the hero's relationship before this, Fate's anguish and inevitable return don't carry the weight it should.
You don't have the tools to defeat me.
But I do.
Rather than an enthralling detour into uncharted territory, the Hand of Fate ends up feeling like a strange oddity. The show also introduces several original villains. The eponymous Livewire, a DJ critical of Superman, is transformed into a being made of pure electricity. Later, the episode Where There's Smoke introduces Volcana, a thief with fire powers who is the result of a secretive government experiment. Both episodes are solid debuts. Lori Petty's unique voice gives Livewire an obnoxiously funny personality.
Lights out, super jerk. Hope you're not afraid of the dark.
Volcana is closer to an anti-hero, whose desire for revenge clashes with Superman's morals.
Volcana, no! Let the courts deal with him.
I prefer my own justice.
However, the power sets of both villains and the action scenes they generate suffer from Superman's vaguely defined power limits mentioned earlier. Many of the action sequences in these episodes can feel drawn out or contrived. Edward Leitner, aka Luminous, is more successful in this regard. Leitner's proficiency with hard light holograms allows for more creative plotting and more complex action. All three villains are fine additions to Superman lore, but none of them surpass the established rogues gallery. Superman's classic villains continue to excel in episodes like Identity Crisis. The episode starts like business as usual as we see a day in the life of the Man of Tomorrow.
I know it's tough to turn down a dare, but sometimes being brave means using your head and not doing something dangerous just because other kids pressure you.
You're right, Superman.
Everything seems routine until...
Take a wrong step, Mr. Kent? What?
In Identity Crisis, the writers find the humanity in another Superman villain, Bizarro. Rather than a power-hungry leech or a vengeful monster, Bizarro is a more sympathetic figure. He genuinely wants to do good because as far as he knows, he is the real Superman.
Let me guess. This is all a distraction, to keep me busy. If you say so, but I should warn you, your makeup's rubbing off.
Soon his mind and body degrade, transforming him into a confused and slow-witted creature, easily manipulated by his true master, Lex Luthor.
What going on? Me am Superman?
Having Tim Daly also voice the character is a clever choice which constantly reminds the viewer of the good heart this unfortunate being possesses. Beneath his grotesque appearance and warped worldview, there is someone who means just as well as Superman.
Behold, you go. Superman, save Lois.
Another classic Superman villain is brought to life even more successfully in the episode Mxyzpixilated. Superman becomes the target of a series of pranks and mind games by the imp from the fifth dimension, Mr. Mxyzpixlated. The only way to banish Mxyzpixlated from Earth is to trick him into saying or spelling his name backwards. At first glance, Mr. Mxyzpixilated seems like a relic of the silly Silver Age of comic books. However, the episode proves this notion wrong. Mr. Mxyzpixilated facilitates some of the most bizarre imagery and creative plotting in the show. Mxyzpixilated is godlike in his power, capable of warping reality into any shape he wants. He could easily destroy Superman with a wave of his hand, but he chooses not to. The first two encounters with Mxyzpixilated prove just how dangerous he can be. He manipulates the Man of Steel into wrecking an art exhibit,
Superman?
and later transforms the Kents into bloodthirsty monsters.
Never seen those before.
There's an unsettling quality to Mxyzpixilated. However, the episode chooses to go in a more comedic direction as Clark Kent devises increasingly clever ways of sending Mr. Mxyzpixilated away.
Oh, it's you again, Mr. Kiltipsism.
Not Kiltipsism, Mxyzpixilated. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do... Oh, nuts!
The late Gilbert Gottfried is perfectly cast in the role, using his loud-mouthed persona to give Mxyzpixilated an appropriately over-the-top energy.
I've only got 90 days until my next bout with that Kate Claude! How does he do it?
The conflict is presented strangely, but at the core, the episode is a surreal battle of wits, with twists and turns that keep the viewer guessing until the very end.
In your face, Superman!
No, loser. It's yours.
Oh, shoot my monkey.
It's villains like Mr. Mxyzpixilated that negate the need to restrain Superman's power level. Mxyzpixilated shows just how bold and imaginative a Superman story can be when writers stop insisting the character needs to be fixed. Now, please don't make me say Mr. Mxyzpixilated ever again. Later in the season, the show wades back into darker territory in a brave new Metropolis. An experiment at Star Labs sends Lois into a parallel universe where Superman and Lex Luthor rule over the nation as tyrants. Taking inspiration from the works of George Orwell and Aldous Huxley, Brave New Metropolis depicts a dark dystopian world full of intrigue. The Man of Steel presides over the city, keeping order with an iron fist, but Luthor is the one pulling the strings. When Lois's presence threatens Luthor's grip on power, he tries to have her killed. After a tense Hitchcockian action sequence, she finally comes face to face with this dark reflection of Superman.
Lois?
You.
The episode places Lois and Superman's relationship at the heart of the story. Their dynamic is reminiscent of the same relationship seen in the classic Donna Reeve version, but with updated personalities for both characters. Lois is charming, funny, and headstrong, the thorn in the side of anyone up to no good. Clark Kent, meanwhile, maintains a quiet confidence. Tim Daly's performance threads the needle. It's strong without being boastful, and humorous without making Clark seem like a buffoon. They're both well-rounded characters who spark off each other well. For all of Lois's cynicism, even she can't deny the miraculousness of a figure like Superman. He serves as her guardian angel, always there when she needs him most. For Superman, Lois is his anchor to humanity, the constant reminder of the ordinary life he's fighting to protect and uplift as Superman. This is what gives Brave New Metropolis its power as a story. It shows us a world where love no longer exists.
You never knew how I felt about you. I never knew. Till you were gone.
You could have said something.
And it's those like Luthor who rule unchecked, while the rest of the population suffers in squalid slums and brutal prison camps. Beneath the surface of this gritty science fiction story is a sweeping melodrama of love triumphing over darkness as the people rise up against their tyrant. Like the best Superman stories, it wears its heart on its sleeve. Soon after Brave New Metropolis, the show gives us a deeper insight into Lex Luthor than ever before in Ghost in the Machine. When a new LexCorp product suffers a dangerous malfunction, Luthor's investigation brings him face to face with the resurrected Brainiac, who traps Luthor and forces him to construct a new body. In the modern day, it's easy to forget that Lex Luthor's incarnation as a corrupt businessman was invented by John Byrne. Beforehand, Luthor was closer to a mad scientist who attacked Superman with a variety of high-tech contraptions and advanced weaponry. Arguably, turning him into a sharp-suited industrialist takes away some of the fun from the character. The DC animated version of Lex Luthor is so successful because it combines both aspects of the character. Initially, he fits the bill as the evil corporatist, but Ghost in the Machine showcases his abilities as a genius inventor. Ghost in the Machine pushes Luthor to extremes as he is taken from his seat of power and trapped in a basement. Forced to do the dirty work he usually hands off to his employees.
I'm not some infernal machine. I'm human. I need food and rest.
The episode features some effective drama by following Mercy Graves as she tracks Luthor down after his disappearance. Like Harley Quinn before her, Mercy Graves functions well as a loyal henchwoman in previous episodes, but here her deeper motivations are revealed.
Before I met him, I was living on the streets, like a stray dog. He took me in, made me what I am.
This greater insight into the character sets up a heartbreaking turn of events in the episode's climax. Rather than being grateful for Superman's rescue, instead, Luthor ekes out a small personal victory, knowing that despite everything, he can't be touched.
I'm waiting.
Season 2 of Superman the Animated Series boasts many great episodes, but the standout by far is the epic 3-part crossover event World's Finest. In Gotham, the Joker steals a statue made of kryptonite and leaves for Metropolis to make a deal with Lex Luthor. Batman is hot on his heels, and his pursuit of the clown Prince of Crime brings him face to face with Superman for the first time. World's Finest is a contender for the best episode of the entire show. It innately understands the appeal of superhero crossovers, and ensures the first meeting between the Dark Knight and the Man of Steel is as fun, surprising, emotionally charged, and action-packed as possible. The legendary Kevin Conroy reprises his role along with the rest of the Batman animated series cast. Hearing both casts bounce off each other with Burnett and Dini's dialogue is delightful.
Excuse me, aren't you the famous Lois Lane?
Oh! Me? Famous? Well, hardly. I mean, this is Clark Kent.
Batman's appearance in Metropolis is a huge shake-up to the status quo. In their first meeting, Batman astonishes by throwing Superman through a table.
I heard you were crazy. I didn't think you were stupid.
From there, a sizzling rivalry builds between the two. Superman returns the favor by blowing Batman's secret identity.
Bruce Wayne. You peaked.
Only for Batman's brash action to reveal itself as a clever ploy to expose Clark Kent.
Touché.
The rivalry intensifies further when Bruce Wayne sweeps Lois off her feet, beginning a passionate love affair.
It's that I'm sitting on the hottest story of the year, Batman, unmasked, and there's not a blessed thing I can do about it.
Then you really do love me.
Next to Superman's clean moralism, Batman, for lack of a better word, comes off as so cool by comparison. But lest anyone accuse the episode of shortchanging the Man of Steel, the script strikes a terrific balance between both characters. And in their contest against the Joker and Lex Luthor, only both heroes working together can win the day. When Joker kidnaps Lois to bait Superman into a kryptonite trap, Superman initially seems to have the upper hand until...
I forgot the acid!
Luckily, Batman arrives soon after to destroy the crystal, but only Superman's powers can save them all. A perfect illustration of both heroes suffering defeats and earning victories without the situation ever feeling contrived. There's an equal amount of fun to be had on the villain side as the chaos of Joker and Harley runs up against the refined logical scheming of Luthor and Mercy.
Put him down, Baldy!
Mercy!
As the Joker's plan devolves into a rampage across Metropolis, the two heroes finally put their differences aside.
Luthor's been lining his buildings with lead. It blocks my X-ray vision.
Well, there's always the direct approach. You're learning.
The final action sequence is equal parts superpowered throwdown,
Lead-lined door. I'll have to thank Luthor.
and swashbuckling aerial battle.
Ah, the heck with it.
Put simply, World's Finest embodies all the best qualities of both shows. It's thrilling, funny, and action-packed. Superhero popcorn entertainment in its finest form.
At this point, he probably is.
That same year saw the start of the New Batman Adventures, and both shows were grouped together as the New Batman-Superman Adventures. World's Finest was positively received by both fans and critics alike, winning a Daytime Emmy Award for Superman the Animated Series. Following its success, more Batman crossovers followed. Nighttime sees Superman impersonate the Dark Knight after Bruce Wayne vanishes under mysterious circumstances. This intriguing mystery comes with plenty of humor as Clark Kent does his best impression of Batman.
Where in heaven's name have you been?
Away.
That's it? That's all I get?
And baffles the Caped Crusaders' rogues gallery with his superhuman abilities.
That's not possible.
He's been working out.
In The Demon Reborn, it is Batman's turn to rescue Superman when Ra's al Ghul kidnaps Clark to drain his life force. Like the Ra's al Ghul episodes in Batman, The Demon Reborn is an engaging slice of pulp adventure, which Superman slots into surprisingly well.
You know, there might be something to this partnership business after all.
Yeah, right.
Crossing the heroes over is a surefire way of crafting a great episode, but World's Finest remains the best. Several episodes after World's Finest is a great solo Superman adventure in The Late Mr. Kent. While chasing a story which could potentially prevent an innocent man's execution, the conspirators murder Clark Kent, leaving Superman to finish the job without the possibility of ever returning to his old life. The episode takes full advantage of Clark Kent's journalistic profession to weave a gripping noir thriller, replete with moody narration and flashback plot structure. Other Superman adaptations often only use his secret identity as a way of setting up a story. However, The Late Mr. Kent shows us that even Superman's day job is another avenue for him to seek truth and justice. Once again, this isn't something Superman can solve through brute strength. Instead, he teams up with Lois to take on the role of detective to expose the true culprits. This is an atypical Superman story with no alien invaders, mad scientists, or monsters run amok. And yet, it's Superman at his most human, with his strong sense of morality driving the plot. Even so, the episode isn't afraid to wade into darker territory. Superman watches helplessly as Lois mourns her colleague.
I always teased him, but I had so much respect. And I liked him too, I really did. Wish I'd told him.
But the darkest beat comes at the end. After police detective Bowman is apprehended as the real murderer, the final scene sees Bowman meet the fate he had foisted on an innocent man.
How did he survive that car bomb? How? He's Superman.
The Late Mr. Kent may be a departure from the expected superheroic antics, but it proves the mild-mannered reporter is just as much of a hero as the Man of Steel. Towards the end of the season, the show returns to epic science fiction in the two-parter Apokolips Now. A being from the planet New Genesis journeys to Earth to warn Superman of a looming invasion ordered by the mighty ruler of Apokolips, Darkseid. Darkseid first appeared in DC Comics in an issue of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. However, Jack Kirby's pantheon of new gods was not a large part of Superman's mythology at the time. The producers of Superman the Animated Series brought them into the show to beef up Superman's rogues gallery with a formidable cosmic threat. The Apokolips story arc was first introduced in Season 1's Tools of the Trade.
Welcome to Apokolips, Mr. Manheim.
Who are you?
Your new lord and master. You may call me Darkseid.
And resurfaced again in Father's Day.
And when the time comes, you and this primitive planet will swear allegiance to Darkseid, or you will be destroyed.
Apokolips Now is the payoff to this build-up, as for the first time in the series, the entire world is at stake. The forces of Apokolips present a threat which Superman can't handle alone. Luckily, he is aided by Lieutenant Dan Turpin. Turpin was another Jack Kirby creation, and as a tribute to the writer/artist, Turpin's appearance and personality were modelled after Kirby himself. He is initially critical of Superman, but over time the two develop a grudging respect for one another.
Looks to me like Superman saved your skin again.
Other way around. If it wasn't for Dan Turpin, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. Thanks.
Anytime, pal.
Darkseid is voiced by Michael Ironside, and his performance stands alongside Kevin Conroy's Batman as definitive. In Apokolips Now, Darkseid's voice loses its previous modulation, as Ironside's unaltered voice perfectly captures the character on its own. His menace comes from his calm arrogance. After all, the truly powerful do not need to shout.
You're a magnificent opponent, Superman. But even you must realize it's hopeless.
Apokolips Now heightens everything in Superman the Animated Series. The scale of the action is larger than ever before. Turpin commands troops in gritty street-level battles, while Superman fights in the skies and uses his powers to stop Earth from being terraformed into another apocalypse. The emotional impact is also heightened when a last-minute reprieve comes at a terrible cost.
Savor your moment of triumph, Superman. But remember, victory has its price.
By the end of Apokolips Now, the stakes have been raised higher than ever before.
In the end, the world didn't really need a Superman. Just a brave one.
Something more hopeful follows the death and darkness of Apokolips Now in Little Girl Lost. When Superman surveys the ruins of Krypton, he discovers a long-lost relative on a forgotten sister planet, Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl. Like Batgirl before her, the animated series incarnation of Supergirl is excellent. While Clark Kent became Superman as part of a moral crusade, Kara, having just discovered her powers, relishes the opportunity for some superheroics for the sheer joy of it. Superman may merely be a persona for Clark, but for Kara, Supergirl is her true self. While flying, she has a bright smile, and her movement style is gracefully balletic. She's not as strong as Superman, but she always dives headfirst into the action and never backs down from a fight. Her outlook is adolescent, not satisfied with a quiet life in Smallville, and always yearning for something more. Her debut two-part episode charts the beginnings of her journey into maturity, but the later episode Unity is her best episode. Unity is an underrated episode, often unfairly dismissed by fans of the series. After a trip to Metropolis, Kara returns to Smallville to find the town taken over by a parasitic alien hive mind. Once again, the writers tipped their hats to 50s sci-fi, taking heavy inspiration from stories like The Puppeteers and the more famous Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The episode nails that creepy, paranoia-drenched atmosphere. Unity's harbinger, Reverend Howell, is an especially memorable villain with an uncanny smile and piercing eyes. The episode is a treat for fans of the subgenre, but the focus on Kara's character is what makes it work. At first, Kara can't wait to get out of Smallville and join her cousin for exciting adventures in the big city. Having seen the glitz and glamour of Metropolis, the townsfolk of Kansas seem crushingly dull by comparison.
Would you say those are rutabagas or turnips?
I'd say turnips.
Now, Eugene, I know rutabagas and I know turnips, and those don't look like no turnips I've ever seen.
After fighting off Unity, she gains a newfound appreciation for the place.
Kara?
Shh. Not so loud, Pa. Let's go.
Kara's more innocent worldview proves to be a strength rather than a hindrance. It fuels her heroism and reinforces her familial bond with the Kents. She should be in no hurry to grow up.
Say, Martha, did you see what the langs are growing? Looks like rutabaga.
I don't know, Jonathan. Looks like turnips to me.
Overall, Supergirl is a welcome addition to the show, and her debut episode leaves the season on a high. The following season of Superman the Animated Series would unfortunately be its last. Despite solid ratings, the show's production costs had steadily risen, and Kids WB wanted to pivot to more youth-fronted shows like Batman Beyond and Static Shock. With this loss of support from the network, Superman's solo adventures came to an abrupt end in the year 2000. The final season continues the hot streak that started in Season 2. There are some weaker episodes, such as the convoluted return of Mr. Mxyzpixilated in Little Big Head Man.
Hey, $10 says Biz Boy mops the floor with Superhead. You in?
And the underwhelming return of Metallo in Superman's Pal.
What was that supposed to be?
Battery acid.
However, there are plenty of strong crossover episodes. In Brightest Day introduces Green Lantern Kyle Rayner. The powering constructs are vividly rendered in animated form. Sinestro's abilities prove too much for the Man of Steel, paving the way for Rayner to step up and become a worthy hero in his own right.
But I'm just an artist. I doodle in the margins of notepads. I live half my life in a fantasy world.
You sound perfect.
A Fish Story sees the first appearance of Aquaman. The episode features plenty of underwater action, and the drama is given weight thanks to a surprisingly downbeat ending.
Run, you lousy, stinking fish!
But the series ends on the highest of highs in the two-parter Legacy. While exploring space, Superman is captured by Apokolips and brainwashed into believing he's Darkseid's firstborn son. As the greatest form of revenge, Darkseid orders Superman to lead the conquest of Earth. As strong as Lex Luthor and Brainiac are in the show, here Darkseid emerges as Superman's ultimate nemesis. He is Superman's dark reflection, the monster he could become if he ever used his immense power for evil rather than good. Darkseid's revenge is so crushing that it turns Superman into the very thing he hates. It isn't simply an attack on Earth, but an attack on Superman's very soul.
Emil shall die.
But if I help either of you, it'd be considered an act of treason.
Hamilton!
Yes, of course. Just don't hurt me.
Please do what you can.
Pushed to the brink, Superman returns to Apokolips to face Darkseid and finish it once and for all.
That's for Dan Turpin.
Who?
The good man you murdered.
Had I known one human's death would pain you so, I would have killed more.
Here the final battle reaches mythic heights as the two godlike beings brawl possibly to the death.
And kill more I shall. Carry that agony with you to oblivion, Superman.
Though triumphant, in the end, Superman is robbed of victory.
You're free.
Master.
Let me help you, Master.
I am many things, Kal-El. But here, I am God.
Legacy was originally intended to set up a story arc for the next season, one where Superman works to win back the trust of Earth. The show's cancellation leaves the ending on an uncertain note, but there's a kernel of hope. Despite everything that's happened, at least Superman knows he hasn't lost the love of one particular person.
How can I win back the trust of an entire planet?
One person at a time.
I may quibble over certain creative choices, but Superman the Animated Series is a brilliant adaptation of the character. Not only did it succeed in stepping out of the shadow of the Donna Reeve version, it arguably surpassed it. The show embodies everything great about Superman and his world, in a way that feels just as timeless and classic as Batman the Animated Series. Yet it stood apart from other versions, by making its stories and characters relatable and grounded in a way no other version has quite managed to do. Fantastical, epic, and spectacular, but always with real heart at its core. I stop just short of calling it definitive. For me, that will always be the Donna Reeve version, but I perfectly understand anyone who disagrees. Whenever I finish re-watching the first two original Superman movies, and I want to enjoy another great adventure with the Man of Tomorrow, there's no better place to go than Superman the Animated Series. Thank you for watching. Leave the video a like, and if you want to stay up to date on future uploads, hit the subscribe button and bell icon. You can also see videos early, uncut, and ad-free by joining me on Patreon. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members with an ultra thanks to Ian Feebig, Alex Miller, Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Ed Mark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yane, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thank you once again for watching, and until next time, have a good one.